Hello, this is Nova Topflex, and in this demonstration, I am going to be demonstrating how to install Slackware Linux 32-bit onto your computer or virtual machine. In this case, I'm doing a 32-bit installation, so I'm doing display set to 1. That's going to be the landscape VNC because I have two different virtual network computing interfaces. So 32-bit is QEMU-system-i386, and the drive file, just put the ISO name and then format RAW. The ISO should have media CD-ROM, and the IMG, the image media, should be disk. Normally, format is RAW unless otherwise specified. And then to boot to the CD-ROM for installation, it's going to be -boot and then lowercase d. In this demo, I'm allocating 1024 megabytes, or 1 gigabyte. And then Excel KVM, device VGA mem MB equals 4, CPU Pentium. So I actually changed my mind about this. I'm not going to do a 16 gigabyte. I'm going to delete Slackware and do another. I would recommend that you add a little bit more storage to your virtual machine if you are doing anything other than Alpine. So I'm going to do QEMU-IMG create -F raw-O size equals 24G, and then I'm going to say slackware.img. It was a 16 gigabyte, now it's a 24, so I can have an easier time. So I'm going to use this, by the way, is going to be you can boot from the command line directly. So since this is a regular Pentium, this is Pentium, we don't even say Pentium 1, just a Pentium, you need to do huge.s. The default kernel, hugesmp.s, requires that you have i686. You have to have 586 to use a regular. You have to use 686 in order to be like this. And since I'm on a system older than Pentium 3 on the virtual machine, if you're on a really old system older than Pentium 3, that's probably too old of a computer to use in most modern circumstances. But if you are using an older device, pre-Pentium 3 in any way, you have to do huge.s. If it is a Pentium 3 or newer, usually you'll do hugesmp.s. Now, you can also press F2 for a listing of more kernel choices as appropriate. init-rd loading is slow. Does this mean that I forgot about KVM? KVM is still in there, actually. Now decompressing Linux. In the example above, dev SCA1 is the /Linux partition. i586 plus platform is appropriate, and actually, we have two drives. We have the hard disk and we have CD-ROM, which is actually a DVD-ROM drive, but the Slackware, I think, is a CD-ROM. So it shows the gigabytes, it shows the, I think it's gigabyte or maybe gigabyte, but if it's gigabyte, then it would be gigabyte. I think it's gigabyte and gigabyte or maybe gigabyte. Now, I'm going to continue using the US map. I don't think that the virtual machines like changing the keyboard layouts compared to the host system. Plus, this is Linux anyway. So, log into root, and then I'm going to select, I'm going to do setup to start the main installation. Unfortunately, I might not have partitioned yet. So, in order to do this, you could do cfdisk for master boot record, or cgdisk for a GPT partition, and read the setup help file from the next menu. So I'm going to do cgdisk. So I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to do cgdisk. Type device file name. Okay, so let me actually check. Do I have parted? A partition manager. Help. This is how you help with the partition, so the parted. Now, print devices. Okay. Quit, not exit, but quit. mkfs.ext4/dev/sda. Okay. Now you can try to set up. There don't seem to be any partitions of this type Linux. So you will use cgdisk in order to do this. So cgdisk/dev/sda. So basically everything is a Linux file system, and I'm actually going to... So write partition table to disk. This may destroy data. I'm going to say yes, actually. You have to destroy the data in order to install, usually. And partitioning can also be complicated. Anyways. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to now try setup one more time. Now, you might have better luck than I do, but read the help file for the Slackware setup. So you'll be able to move down, move up pages and lines, and then... So you actually have the B, the space, the J, K, H, L, and other letters indeed. So virtual consoles and scroll back. So you're probably looking at virtual console number 1 or /dev/tty1 and Linux speak. Alt F1, Alt F2, Alt F3, and Alt F4. You do get a small amount of text scroll back buffer. Hold down the right shift key and hit page up. That right shift key and page up is where you get to the buffer. And then you can scroll the console forward, by the way, also by doing the page down while holding the right shift key down. Especially useful for reading the boot messages, which can go by too fast to read otherwise. On the install disk and so on, and then partition your drive. You can do it with master boot record. You can do it with GOID partition table. I recommend that you only do master boot records. I think I heard, if you remember right, it was Windows MBR in the past, but it's legacy, and it's largely been superseded by GPT, GUID partition tables anyway. Especially if you have more than 2 terabytes of storage on your system. So I'm going to set up my target partitions, not swap, but target. And then just, no, I think I already have, do I have an ext4 file system? I thought I did. Install from a Slackware, this is a CD or DVD. Scanning for a drive, a Slackware disk, this is a Slackware disk. Base Linux system. If you are on a virtual machine, I would recommend that you add all of these except for the GNOME desktop if you have the option to delete the GNOME desktop. The cholesterol-free desktop environment is what some people... It's the old style name of the XFCE desktop environment. So here we can see that I'm doing everything, including the XFCE, the X Windows system. The GNOME desktop does not show up. Games are usually not as important as the rest. If you're on a virtual machine, games can be a little bit bloated, and they may impact your performance on VMs. Some people don't even use the games. Like, I don't use the games a lot on my Linux systems personally, so I wouldn't need it. If you use games, you might want or need it, though. So please respect your actual needs. So I'm going to do terse would be like full, but display 1 line per package during install. Full, terse, menu, expert, newbie, custom, tag path, help. I'm going to do terse. Installing package series A. AAA base. AAA glibc SOLibs. These are for i586. I believe some packages might be i686 packages. I do not know if GNOME is a 686, or if that's why there's no GNOME desktop on Pentium. But this is package series A. You can still use recent versions of Bash on a 32-bit system based on Linux. Core utils. Core utils still support 32-bit. Dbus. So, if you can see all the packages on your system, these are the packages I'm installing on my QEMU virtual machine on the way to, hopefully, a full installation of Slackware Linux. So please, keep watching if you would like to learn more about the different features of a Slackware installation. You will eventually see most of the system libraries usually necessary for X, GNOME, KDE, XFCE, the formerly known as cholesterol-free desktop environment. Now, since I'm on 586, feel free to tell me in the comments if if GNOME is a 686 program and will not work on a 586 as a result. But just in case, I have gotten rid of games also, so this will hopefully free up some storage space. When I did this on a 16 gigabyte storage drive, it was almost full. Hopefully with 24, I have more space to do my own things and my own interests, ideally. And your own features and interests, and actually, yes. But some people are better off with containerization than with virtual machines anyway. I think it's the difference between a Type 1 hypervisor and a Type 2 hypervisor. But here on QEMU, you might think you're on a container instead of a virtual machine just because it's near native performance, because you usually think of virtual machines as being much slower than this. You might feel like you are on a container, but this is still a VM, and I know that for a fact. If you didn't know this about Slackware, Slackware is actually the oldest continuously operating Linux distribution and oldest to be continuously maintained. Only a few years after Linux was first created at all, to begin with. It was open source, not at first, but within a few years, it became a massive success. And while you may not realize that it's a majority operating system because you're on the desktop market, in the server market, yes, it is the most significant operating system type. It's based on Unix. Most Linux distributions are POSIX compliant, but not all. Bash is a common shell for the vast majority. Let me check. This is now the packages that do not require X. This is actually not just the A packages, which are the essentials. Basic Linux functionality, I think, is all installed. Now, the system is installing the packages that do not require X. If you are still on here, I'm very sorry that I stopped talking. I was asking you to please check with all the information. I am just going to be talking here and there intermittently. This is actually a lot of the Linux kernel related features, as well as the, I believe, header files might be in there. But overall, this is usually what you're installing on a Slackware system. Please note that this is actually terse mode, so it's going to show one line per package. It's very similar to the regular version, but you will see exactly what's going on. And you will see more about specifically what packages are being installed. Some packages take longer to install than others. Like the library packages and the kernel packages usually take more storage space than most of the other packages on a given system, and are actually shared between different applications. Because the libraries are shared, you may actually have even less bloatware on your system than you do on a mainstream operating system that you may use personally on the day-to-day. I wouldn't recommend Slackware to a beginner though, because I believe Slackware uses tarballs as the package manager. So it might not even feel like it has a proper package manager. I believe they use tarballs. It's kind of sort of like a BSD, where tarballs are the dominant form of package management. But at the very least, if you do need to install basic software, most GNU packages will run on Slackware. It's /configure make sudo make install. The GNU compiler collection will work on Slackware. Plus, for the most part, we associate it with systemd. It is rare for Linux distributions to not use systemd. For instance, Alpine is an exception. I'm actually going to cover Alpine in a different video, but it uses OpenRC, whereas this is systemd. These are actually more scripting tools, like Ghostscript, Corn Shell, which is an AT&T shell. So it is installing multiple shells. And even if the shell is not installed in your system, usually you will be able to do most of the features. Slackware, again, if a package is not available, you can compile it from source. You can create programs on Slackware to run yourself. And usually, you can make them operating system agnostic, not platform agnostic, but OS agnostic. Like, you can make one that works on all distributions of Linux for i386, or you can do a 64-bit version, which will only run on the 64-bit systems. Backward compatibility is a feature of the 32-bit. If you do it in 32-bit, then you will be able to do it on a 64-bit system. You will not be able to do any 64-bit materials on a 32-bit system by definition. If you want to get an estimate on how long it's going to take to install also to the virtual machine, you will be able to do it. Depends on if you have a hard drive, a solid state drive, or quite literally anything else on your system. Tmux, Vim. These are not random tools. These are very important tools to use on your system in most cases. Package Series D, development, automake, bin utils. And don't worry, this will not be all the packages on your system. Some packages are just dependencies and prerequisites for other packages on your system. For instance, that is definitely going to be the case whenever you are on a situation such as one that involves GNOME, KDE, Plasma, XFCE. These all are. If packages are not installed, it's because I don't know if there are any 686 packages, but I'm on a 586 VM, so not all the 686 packages may be installed, especially not GNOME. If GNOME is a 686 package to begin with, by the way. So Doxygen took a long time. Now GCC is usually going to take a very long time. And then this is the GCC, is it Bridge or, I think it's Brig, B-R-I-G, Brig. Or BR1G, no, Brig. Brig support, G++. If you're wondering about GCC, the GNU cross compiler, the C compiler, the compiler collection, the compiler collection, not connection, we install, usually we will see GCC for C, G++ for C++, GDC is for D. If you have NAT installed in your system, that's for Ada. GCC Go is for Go. And then GM2 is for Modula 2. Go is actually a tricky programming language. Who knows if it's a compiled language or an interpreted language? It kind of feels like it could be both. I actually believe I prefer using Go Run on a Go project, so I actually did MapTile on an earlier video as Novatoplex, so feel free to watch MapTile if you want to know what Go is like. Since I use Go, not GCC Go, for it. Maybe there are multiple ways to do it, maybe not. I forgot about Fortran. Objective-C and Objective-C++. The latter is not actually a language, but a framework that basically combines Objective-C and C++ concepts all into one. That's the GNU debugger. That's Git. That's going to be gperf. And feel free to continue watching. That's Ruby, and that's RenUtils, a set of C headers. Make, Mercurial, Mason. Remember, developer tools will also take a very long time, and will have a disproportionate size. It takes up a disproportionate amount of your storage space. If you're comparing it to other features, usually the shell commands take up less space. Other than shell commands, another feature that will take up less space than usual. So you end up having more space for the graphical apps, the developer tools, the system libraries, kernel files, kernel headers, and then you have much less space taken up for basic applications on the terminal, usually. This is Rust. It takes up 857 megabytes? Yes. Even though it took so much storage, Rust, obviously, you can still do Subversion. That's one of the benefits of upping storage, increasing it from 16 gigabytes to 24 when you do Slackware installations and other installations of really anything other than Alpine Linux. Because Alpine is similar to a BSD in some ways, Slackware as well, but Slackware is kind of a heavier distro. So We just finished Emacs and the Linux frequently asked questions or facts. We just finished all the dev tools. Now we're installing the KDE Plasma series. Or is it the KDE series? This is actually kernel. So kernel source and whatnot. So these are KDE Plasma. Most of the applications that begin with K are KDE Plasma applications that are to be installed. These applications are largely only a few megabytes, but they add up and are usually much larger than applications on the command line interface, or CLI. Since this is a graphical interface, most of the KDE applications will take a long time to ultimately download. K-stars, and then it's a desktop planetarium, so of course it's going to take up a lot more storage. I think these are just utilities. Neutral utilities. Might actually be driver files. Some of these, after this one, will actually be indeed related to GNOME and the GNOME desktop environment. Icon naming utils, and then more libraries related to different features necessary for select environments like X, GNOME, KDE, XFCE. Again, GNOME will not be installed in this installation. These are more Python utilities. Now installing the tech.